All right, I think we're good. I think we're going live. It's just setting it up. This is the new intro. Tech fumble. Let's see. Are we there? Are we live? Oh, we are. Good. Okay. Good. Hello, ancient Southwesterners. This is the first time we're doing. I'm Angeline, and this is the first time we're doing something like this in this group. And I have invited archaeologist Sarah Bertman to chat with us about. Oh, wait, let me record this. Let's see, record on this computer. Yes, it might ask you for permission, Sarah. Okay, so yeah, I invited Sarah Bertman to chat with us about her experience in archaeology. Now, here's the thing. We all have a vision of archaeology being like Indiana Jones, or maybe, a silver fox dude, white dude with a Panama hat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are looking at the future of archaeology. Sarah Bertman. She's pretty new to the field, but she has some really interesting experience. And so I just sort of thought it would be fun to bring her on. She's told me a lot about some of the things she's done. And I thought everyone wants to hear about this. This is fascinating stuff. So I've invited Sarah to come and talk to us. So hi, Sarah.
Hi.
So do you want to, let's see, how should we start this? I don't want to just throw you straight into the fire. Do you want to talk about like, why don't we just start with this? Because I think it's really interesting. I don't know a lot about it, but I want to hear about it. Okay. You have a BA in anthropology, right?
Yes.
You are a working archaeologist. You've been on a few digs, both as a student and professionally, and you work for organizations as an archaeologist, correct? And you are pursuing a certificate in a new field called GIS.
Yeah.
Right? And when you told me that, I was like, what is GIS? So just because that's new to me, and I like this stuff, and I've never heard of it. So maybe you can just kind of say, what is that? What's GIS? You're learning about this, why, and why is it new, and what can it do for us?
It's relatively new. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems, and pretty much I'm in a program right now where I'm pursuing a certificate in it, and my idea for it is to use it to help me with archaeology. But GIS can be used in so many different things, like city planners who might know how to use GIS. They might use it to plan out, like where they might put a new coffee shop or the most ideal spots. I know that you can also use GIS for like crime scene investigations. So it was really kind of cute when my professor assigned us a task and said, like, here's a pretend body dump. Where would you pretend to dump a body? So we got to pretend to dump a body, and like, yeah. But it was all in this program that's called ArcGIS. So the program, it's not available for Mac. You have to run it through a PC. And it's kind of it's not a difficult program. It just takes a long time to load. Sometimes it can be
What
kind of
is it? What
tedious.
does it mean?
The ArcGIS is mainly just used to make maps, but I'm still learning about it myself too. So like right now, I'm learning that it's used for a lot of different things in archaeology particular. So I was reading an article not that long ago had to do with like using GIS in order to rehabilitate old archaeological collections. So the author, she was using an older format GIS, but still nonetheless. And she was able to input like pictures from the site. She was able to input graphs that would tell you like, oh, so we found these items in this levels, and particular pictures of those items, different documents such as like sketch maps. It's also a way too to like, I guess, kind of like digitize your sketch maps depending on how centralized you want to go or how broad you want to be. When I was working with the program this last semester, we were doing it in a really broad sense. We were trying to find out different sites within the Antelope Valley that have been excavated. That's where I'm from the Antelope Valley. So we didn't really like broad scheme, but you can use it for so
Antelope
many
Valley,
different things.
California, for anybody who might not, anyone who might be watching from
Yeah,
someplace who's not
Antelope
California,
Valley,
it's
California.
California, which is Southern California and the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I actually initially went to Antelope Valley College. I graduated in 2017, and from there I transferred on to UCLA. And when I was at UCLA, I was doing my bachelor's in anthropology, and I also did an honors thesis. And so in my thesis, I wanted to revisit collections that were housed at my community college, Antelope Valley College, and a lot of the collections there have been like subsequently orphaned, so they've been excavated and then had no analysis done on them afterwards.
I'm going to
So
stop you there because that is a really interesting topic that I want you to cover in detail. So I want to save that for a second, okay?
okay.
But this, talk to me like I'm 5 about GIS. Like walk up to a 5-year-old and try to explain what is it.
Oh God, that's so hard.
Like, is it a
GIS
mapping
is literally
software? Is it,
it's a mapping software. You learn how to make maps. You learn how to plot points, make maps, and then manipulate those maps in whatever way you want to do. And that includes manipulating the data, so you can show different things.
so if I took a GIS, what machine? Is that it? You like take pictures or
Not
something or?
It's not really like a machine. It's just a computer program.
Okay.
You have to buy the computer program through
Okay.
Esri. I think they have like it's kind of pricey though. They have like a student one you can buy for like I think like $100 or so dollars. I think, but your credits in it expire after a certain amount of time, or if you use your credits, which means like you're using your credits to manipulate the data that you're working with. So for instance, when I was taking my GIS class, we were given data from wherever our professor got it from. It's really easy to get data for GIS. You can go to like just like the USGS website and pick up data.
Mhm.
So for instance, we might have
Okay.
picked up data for like, so here's a whole map that says, just of California, that says all of the areas where there's different geology
Mhm.
types. Or pick up another map that says here's all of Southern California, and it says all the different types of vegetation and what areas they're in, and if they
Mhm.
overlap in X, Y, and Z. So you can pick
Okay.
up data,
And then you can plot waypoints.
and you can pick up the data from anywhere. I mean, yeah, and you can get these things for free. You should never pay for it. That's what my professor says. Never pay for data. Um,
Never paid.
so
Can
you
you
can get your
listen? My
data.
dog is digging in a bean bag and just completely driving me nuts. Actually, I'm going to call my husband on the phone and have him come get my dog because so what I do is I give her these little bones, which she doesn't ever eat. She just like carries them around the house and finds a place to hide them. Right. And so right now what she's doing is she's like, I don't know if she's hiding one or finding one, but she's making me crazy. So hang on. I'm going to get the sheriff in town and get him to get the outlaw out of it. Because if I lock her out, she's gonna knock on the door.
Oh no,
Oh,
she's a smart dog.
he's playing video games in the basement. He probably doesn't even know his phone's ringing. Oh my god, these
Oh no.
people. Oh yeah, I got his voicemail. I got his voice. He never takes my calls.
You got declined.
You will not believe. You got a voicemail. I got your voicemail, and I need you. Okay. Oh, the dog left on her own. Okay. Fine.
Okay.
All right. So, all right. Crisis averted, Sarah. All right. So, all right, I got you. So you, there's all this free data, you put it into the software, and this helps you when you're out surveying for archaeology because you already have basically every bush is plotted for you, right? And then you can sort
Well,
of
not
make your,
necessarily every bush, but it like you can get data that'll tell you like different like ranges of areas where certain vegetation exists, for instance,
okay.
or like ranges of areas where certain geology exists, different geologic types. But
Mm-hmm.
it you can so I know for GIS in archaeology you can plot out like here is exactly the UTMs, the northing and the easting for specific units, for specific locations. And sometimes in archaeology we take note of like things that aren't necessarily archaeology related, because you have to have something to base what you're looking at off of. So for instance, if I'm, the Edison, the utility poles, sometimes you might plot those because you're saying like, well, like it could be you might be monitoring for an Edison job, and um you might have to take account of the pole. So they would have given you initially, when I've been in the field, they've given me literally given me GIS software in a on a tablet, and they point them, like they make the plots and then I do the surveying. But I wanted to do GIS essentially so that I could learn, if I ever want to be the person who makes the maps, or essentially, it works so hand in hand in archaeology. That's why I think
Systems
it's
doing it
so
for
important.
themselves.
Yeah, so I mean, you
Okay.
also would want to say, for instance, if you were maybe excavating something and it was nearby like a house or nearby a fence, you could take the point of the fence, the house, or whatever, so you'd know approximately how long, and then you take in your notes too, like it was X amount of yards or meters away. My excavation unit was X amount of meters from this house, and I excavated it in 2021, and the house was standing here. So you'd want to use it to take notes. You literally, in archaeology, you just want to document everything. I don't know how important that is, that you just want to document everything you can. It should be like super clear about what you're documenting, because you don't know someone who's going to come along in the future, and what are they going to see, and how are they going to interpret what you saw, what you found. Exactly. So
Well, I can put this in context of how this could be useful, because recently I was investigating what's called Lost City. It's also called Pueblo de Nevada, in Moapa Valley, which is like the Muddy River, the Virgin River meets Lake Mead, that area. Okay, so there's Harrington. You've heard of Harrington? Was a researcher in the early 1900s, and he's kind of known for sloppy note taking. Like, in those days archaeology didn't really exist. You just kind of went out there and like dug up stuff and stole pots or whatever you wanted to do, and you write it down if you're sort of ethical, right? So he was on the more ethical side, and he was really trying to do some science. But what he did was he went to this one site that's now called Lost City, or this in slang it's called Lost City, and there's these, how there's different pockets of information about a site. So there's like site 1, site 2, site 3, all over that area. And what he did was he would name like burial 1, burial 2, burial 3, burial 4 for that site. And then he would also name this one burial 1, burial 2, burial 3, burial 4. And people are having to go through all his little pieces of notes, because he was very sloppy note taker, and figure out, like, so the burial 1 said it has a pot, but burial 1 also says there's no pottery in the burial. You know what I mean? So they're having to figure out where this is in place, place and time. And so this is where GIS would come in handy, instead of having to take these handwritten notes and make your little drawings. And you can
those things they're
formalize.
very important too. But it's like, think of it as GIS could be this type of vessel that holds everything, but kind of in like a more concreted fashion, because if you put it into the system, it's always going to be in there. Now, if something happens to the system,
Almost like crowdsourcing.
Yeah. So that's kind of something actually I've been working on in my GIS class. I mean, I've only taken the one class and I really like it. I'm taking 2 this semester. Actually, I'm taking 3. I'm taking a mapping class too, but yeah. So like, my goal is to see how GIS can really be used in archaeology. I guess initially that's what I wanted to do, but now I'm seeing that it can be really important for the orphan collections. So I'm hoping to try and use that.
Yeah. So Sarah has done a thesis in her undergraduate work before she became an official anthropologist, and she was, in the process of becoming. This is what granted her access to the professional world of anthropology. She did a thesis on orphan collections. So first of all, before you talk about your project, will you say what is an orphan collection? What does this mean in the archaeological?
So orphan collections, wow, the definition of it is so broad, because collections can be orphaned in like a wide variety of ways.
Sorry, we're getting feedback because I accidentally put this on my phone too. Close. Sorry. Please, I'm sorry. What's an orphan collection?
Essentially, in archaeology, yeah, so I'm trying to break it down in my mind. In archaeology, orphan collections are collections that have pretty much been excavated at one point in time, and then they're subsequently orphaned because they haven't had any analysis done. I think maybe it might be like a 10-year period. I've heard people say if it's a 10-year period or more, they're considered orphan, but I don't know necessarily how true that is. But essentially, they've been put on the shelf in a lab or in a warehouse somewhere. Everything's been excavated, they've been put there, and then just
but nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows how it integrates with the landscape or with the overall culture group that may be nearby or something. It's just an excavation recorded, no information known about it, period. Just picked up the stuff and the data and moved on.
Okay, so there's a really important archaeologist at Stanford University. Her name is Barbara Voss, and she talks about the process of going through and taking orphan collections and how. So instead of talking about all the theoretical like reasons why collections are orphaned and how are we going to solve the problem, because it's largely kind of due to CRM. So which CRM is cultural resource management, which has to do with, like when you see a construction site and there has to be an archaeologist on site. And say, for instance, they find something, it doesn't even have to be like a burial or anything. They start finding artifacts, just flakes or anything like that. They'll stop you, and then they proceed from there. And usually if they collect that stuff, that's when the collection becomes orphaned, because the CRM companies, the archaeologists who are working on them, they're not necessarily it's not really within their job description sometimes to actually go through the collections. Like, what do you do after it's been excavated? So she talks about how you can go back to these collections, and while there's been a really large like gap in time, so the gap being that it's been excavated and then now years and years later you have someone who's coming along and saying, nobody's ever done any analysis on this. Let's go back and do the analysis. So that gap of time is it's so important, because like you were saying with the note taking, if someone did document the sites, they'd just be like, chicken scratch this and that, and like all these things might be unorganized, and you're like, how do I make sense of this? And then at the end of the day, you're thinking like these ethical implications of that. This is worthy of analysis. You have to find things that are worthy of analysis. Everything should be analyzed, right? That's the kind of the goal. But when these this is when these collections, they get orphaned, you find that like, I guess you kind of need to do like a sort of an assessment to see, does this collection, does it possess enough to have the potential of analysis now? So you might look at like the organization of a collection, what's literally in the collection, the documentation, and then documentation goes so wide because you want to look at like everyone's field notes. You want to look at the the primary investigators' field notes, because they probably have different field notes. You're talking about photos. You're talking about maybe drawings, sketch maps even included. And then it goes back to that, like I said, so like some of these collections, I mean, they were excavated in like the 80s, even before that. And so practices have changed so drastically, like we don't, if you're going to plot a site on a map, on a topo map, we don't use township and range, which is like, it's northing and easting. It's kind of like an XY grid, if you were to say. We use northing and easting now. We use UTM. So that is completely changed. So it's important for archaeologists to know about township and range for these reasons, but it's kind of an outdated thing. And the same thing goes for sketch maps. You should know how to, draw a sketch map, which is, it's really a thing. You pull out your compass and you start sighting things around you, and you start sighting where the artifacts are in relation. But it's kind of outdated because now we have, GPS. So I can just like, take my little GPS unit out in the field and just like, oh, there's a point right there. Oh, okay, there's a point right there, and just start plotting stuff, right? So it's so advanced.
So if you can do that, why do you need to know how to do the sketch map?
Because what if you're out in the field and everything fails on you? What if you're out in the
Right.
field and just like I mean, I've heard of horror stories about people losing their GPS units before.
Oh my God.
I heard of one guy who said he was like, he was hiking and he came to this point where he was going to take a break, and he got up to this like really cool scenery, and he was like, I'm just actually going to take a break right here, it's so beautiful, and like I'm going to eat my lunch off the side of a cliff. And then he put his GPS unit and that thing just slid off.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
You're like, well, that's like, a couple $1,000s. You think
Oh.
that he actually went to go back down later in the night and he put like a headlamp on, found it, and then tried to reassemble it. But I don't make the GPS units. I don't know how. That's beyond my knowledge. So, but okay, that's really extreme. But like, what if you're in the field and you're just you can't connect with a satellite? Because the thing is that you're able to take these points based on the satellites that are around. So say you're in I've been in the field before where it was so dense because there were so many trees. Like for instance in like Fresno type of area, I was working there, and it was just so dense where I was at, and I was never able to connect with a satellite. I was having so much trouble with my GPS, this and that, and then you know what are you going to do? So if you find a site, you should ideally know how to map the thing out. But it's not,
Okay.
like I said, like it's important. I think it's important. And I was taught that it was important. And that was the person who also taught me how to make maps. But,
Yeah.
other people see it now. Like I've mentioned to people before, like, oh, I know how to make a sketch map or this and that. And people are like, but why? Why do you need to know that? We have GPS now. We have your phone at the
Yeah.
least too. So
Who's
yeah.
gonna have the last laugh when you guys have lunch on a cliff, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be me.
You were talking about. I actually am going to come back to this, but tell me more about your orphan collection that you did your dissertation on. Where was it, and what did you find out?
Okay. So yeah, so I went to UCLA and they have an honors program there for anthropology. And I proposed to go back to my community college and specifically work on one orphan collection. There are many orphan collections there, but I wanted to work on one because I kind of had worked on it when I was a community college student, but not really. Like I was kind of just sorting through the collection, seeing what was there. There were so many important components of the collection, and it was so dense. And so that's probably one reason why my community college professor there had deemed that, oh, this is a good collection that we can go back to. It has fairly good documentation. It's kind of not organized, but we can work through it. We can work to organize the collection. um, and there's just so much stuff. There was like, I think, she estimated there being like 20,000 plus artifacts.
Where was this collection from?
So the
What
collection's
geography?
it's in Palmdale, actually. It's from
Palmdale,
Antelope Valley
California.
College. Yeah. So she didn't excavate it herself. It was a previous professor who excavated it during the 80s with community college students. And so community college, I guess, was kind of a bit different back then because I guess you could keep repeating classes. So like say if
Hmm.
you really took interest in an archaeology class, which this happened to be a field component archaeology class. So it'd be something equivalent to like a field school, but on a community college level. So it'd be like, cheaper, and you'd be working with your professor that, you could take different classes with. So there were students who, and I know this because going back and looking through the documentation, you see these names repeated over and over again. So there were
Yeah.
students who came back, maybe they took the class once and they liked it, and so they decided I'm gonna take it again, and you can keep getting credits for that. But they changed that; you can't do that now. So it's kind of like you're taking like a little bit too much. Say if I took one archaeology class and I did well in it, and then I decided just to keep doing it, and it would also count for my credit count when I was transferring to UCLA. So it's kind of not fair.
Mhm.
So these students, though, they were excavating for like 4 years. They did it like I want to say it was like 40 or so test units. I can't think of the number on top of my head. 40 or so test units. So the class, I mean, it was kind of ran, I guess, like more like a CRM type of excavation, because you have to understand that excavations are different depending on where you're excavating.
Mhm.
Excavations in the United States would be different from excavations in Europe. such as like
Mhm.
Spain or the
And we're going to
UK,
talk about that.
Ireland.
So,
Yeah. So yeah, I found that out firsthand. I was like, whoa. So these students, yeah, so they came and they excavated. So you have to understand that if certain students were repeating the class, there were students who were like way better excavators than other students who were taking the class maybe for like their first time or so. And they found a lot of stuff, but I don't know if they, it's still kind of unknown whether or not they had like funding to do the analysis, because that's another aspect that's is really actually one of the most important aspects, and it's a lot of the reason why collections just get orphaned is because was there ever funding to do the
Mhm.
analysis? Because if there wasn't funding, it's kind of like, well, then your answer's solved right there. So
So just I'm going to interrupt you with a question. I mean, just a statement, just for context, really quick. So, like in the last couple of weeks, I took a trip out to the Mojave Desert, and there's been very little excavation, like deep soil excavation, done in the Central Mojave Desert, like the South Central Mojave. Um, Partly because there was an old think that anything, because of the way the desert, not the desert varnish, the cement, desert cement, where
yeah,
the crust, like everything would be on the surface, so there's no point in digging. But then
yeah,
again, if you go in a riverbed, what you see is bedrock, and then you see like 20 feet of sand, right? Like
yeah,
there, there's stuff buried, like you can see it. So anyway, but the point is that so there's been very little excavation, and maybe if somebody had to build like the railroad or had to build a road or something, there would be some culture resource management collect or
yeah,
survey
yeah,
done by an archaeologist, but that archaeologist isn't there to decide whether or not the Southwesterners built a pueblo there. They're just there to say, here's something, we note it, and we decide if we should go ahead with the road or not, and then that survey becomes orphaned, right? And so you chose something that it was in that context, right, where that something had been excavated, but no interpretation had been done because maybe there wasn't funding for it or something, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So what
exactly
did you
that.
find out? What was your dissertation? What did you learn?
So I was actually, so while I was doing a thesis on my part, because I was in the that particular program at UCLA, there were actually other community college students, and then some other alumni who would come back also to finish kind of what they started. Because there were some people who, when I was at community college there, they were working on like the faunal and the groundstone. So faunal would be anything that's and anything that's not human remains, so any animals, and you're trying to see like patterns and what they're trying eating, or butchering patterns, anything. And then groundstone would be like so how do you explain? Groundstone is more like milling stones. It'd be like your
Hmm.
manos and metates,
Tools.
mortar and pestle, yeah, all those types of tools, or what you would call like a molcajete. A lot of people call it that too. um
Mhm.
so there were two girls who were working on the faunal and the groundstone, and they presented like a little bit of their research at the SCAs. The SCAs are the Society for California Archaeology, and usually every year they have not a symposium, a like an annual meeting. So they go somewhere in California, and then everyone just it's fun. You just you talk about all your research and this and that. And so I came along with those two girls. I was just you know, my professor just said like, "Hey, sir, do you want to come? Just come with us for fun." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And it was fun. But I saw that they were presenting, and I was like, "I think I can do that. Like, I still got time at this community college, so I think I could do that." But then I stayed at community college, and I was looking at the other components of the collection that for that specific site. So there's other sites at the community college that were excavated, but for this specific site, I was looking at the shell and stone beads. So shell beads and stone beads, which actually can technically be considered groundstone, but for their sake of divvying out the collection, they said, you're gonna take on the ornamentation aspect of the collection, So so
So
I
you took on the jewelry
yeah,
aspect.
kind of took on the
Okay,
jewelry,
that's
but
interesting.
we have to understand that shell beads are like Olivella shell
But
beads in
yeah, like
particular.
money.
Yeah, they can be money. But then, it kind of makes you think, because there was a lot of shell beads, and where the Antelope Valley is located, like it's nowhere near the coast. So where are they getting all these shell beads, and how are they getting them in return? So you start like thinking about questions like that. Those are questions I was asking, like what could they possibly have been trading in return? And
What
then
did you
who were they
determine? What
trading
were
with?
they trading in return?
I
What
don't
do
know.
you
I
think?
think they were probably trading like acorns in return, because one of the biggest forms of subsistence for Native Americans in Antelope Valley was using acorns. So I that's what I was postulating.
There was acorns at the coast too.
Yeah, but I've heard that they've gone through different periods of time where acorns were not in, like I guess what I want to say is like in abundance as they were here.
Yeah.
So if I
Okay.
have a lot of acorns and you have shells and I don't have shells because I don't even have access to that, and you don't have access to acorns, you think we could trade?
Oh.
But
So who would have been the people you're talking about? What
it would be
culture
the
group?
Serrano
So
Indians. So it's postulated
those
that
are,
Serrano.
excuse me?
It's postulated that's it's the Serrano.
And Serrano are Uto-Aztecans, and do you know about when they came into the area, the Serrano?
Mm, not in
But,
particular, not in the
uh,
Antelope Valley, because this site that I was working on was a contact site. So they think so. So when I was in the program, I was able with the program I had. They gave me a grant fund, so I was actually able to get radiocarbon dates to get the site dated. So we had
cool.
thought, my professors who were at ABC, they thought we think this is a contact site based on the artifacts and mainly based on the shells too, because what you can
Hmm.
do with the shells is you can look at typologies, and typologies can tell you different chronologies throughout time. So they were looking at shells, they were looking at specific like lithic assemblages. Lithic would be like stone tools, but different from groundstone. And they were thinking, well, this might be a contact period site. And then when I had gotten my dates back, I think I sent like 3 dates to like UC Irvine. I got the dates back, and they pretty much dated to that. So that's what we've determined. That's not
So contact
actually
period meaning it was while there were
Spaniards.
Europeans in the area,
Yes,
and
yeah,
these guys were
Europeans.
kind of working within that network. So we don't really, it's
Yes,
everything's all mixed up at that point.
yeah.
And this was this would have been post mission period or during the mission period, or
It would have been post at like its latest points.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
if that makes sense. But that's the thing.
Yeah,
So
right
about
after the mission period. So everything had been messed up by then, and now we're still trying to function
yeah,
and trade things in traditional ways, but it's like not in any way like how prehistory would have looked, you know.
yeah, not necessarily. Yeah.
Okay.
So another thing that is that while I was trying to so my program was kind of weird in the sense that we were given like a summer, only a couple weeks, to kind of figure out our our actual analysis part. Now, I was one of 2 people in my program who were doing archaeology, and everyone else was doing cultural anthropology or like linguistics, but they were going out and they were doing ethnographies, they were talking to people, they were going out of the country, this and that. And so mine was very different from theirs. So when I started analyzing the shell beads that I had, I was, like I said, when I was in community college, I only kind of just looked at them. I just like was like, well, cause they're shell beads. Like it's fun to look at artifacts and still not know what the heck
Yeah.
they are. That's what museums are for. They
Mhm.
teach you.
Right.
But so I was going through the shell beads and looking at them. And I think at that point I was trying to like put them in numerical order based on how they were cataloged or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but it wasn't super important. And when I had actually gone into like my analysis part of the summer, I think it was summer of 2018, I believe. Yeah, I think so. So that summer I was looking through all the shells and stuff, and you think, because they're just so small, they could have just fit in a box. So I was like, this is no brainer, I can get this stuff done in one summer. And then I started going through the stuff, and I was like, oh my god, there are so
Uh-oh, it froze. I don't know if my internet went crazy. No.
what
Are
are
you there?
some
Oh, I lost you for a
Oh
second.
no. Okay.
Okay, so you were saying you had this box, no problem, and then you realized, oh my God, there are
Okay,
so
yeah,
many
yeah.
beads.
Yeah, there were so
Okay.
many beads. So what I was trying to do at that point was trying to find people who I could hire to help me. So now I was like, "Hey, do you want to come along and sort some shell beads with me and like try and find out what they are?" Like I was going to the
How many
anthropologist
were in
and
the box, you think? Like if you had to
I
guesstimate
think
how
like
many.
I counted there was like over 700. But that's including
And
shell
we're
beads.
talking about shell beads
Super
smaller than
small.
anything you can see on this
Oh,
earring, right?
super
Like the
small. It'd be like one of the smallest parts of your earring right there, yeah.
half a
Like your size of your
centimeter or
pinky,
something.
you know. Some of
Okay.
them they can be kind of bigger if it's more like an ornament. And those were some of the things I was coming across too. Like I said, they kind of
Mhm.
lumped me in for just being like ornaments. So sometimes I did come along like these like for instance like abalone shells because they have like that luster that's just like if you
Yeah.
move it this way or that way it just looks so shiny and pretty and it changes
Yeah.
colors. So sometimes I had seen like bigger pieces of that abalone or like rims and you could tell that it was just they're like well they're not actually probably making shell beads in particular with this type of shell. They're probably
Mm.
making maybe ornaments like actual centerpieces for like a necklace or something. um,
Mm.
but a lot of the other shell beads I was looking at were Olivella shell beads, which that's what you were talking about, like the being used as money. It can be used as money.
Yeah.
We're not sure if it was being used as money in the Antelope Valley though. But a lot of people have noted that it's used for that. I think like Gene Arnold and Chester King, they're like pretty. I think Chester King, sure, he's an archaeologist who like specifically does shell beads. um, and what's it called? So I found there was a ton of shell beads, and I was trying to go to community college and like get people like work for me, like and I had enough money to pay them too. I was like, hey, and I can actually pay you. It's a paid job. I felt so cool because I used my grant money that I had gotten from UCLA, so I was actually able to hire some students from the community college, and
Mhm.
they were actually working on a different project in the lab. They were doing something completely different, and I had talked to my professor that I'd taken, which was their professor now. I was like, hey, you think I could get them to like help me? I'll pay them. Maybe you can still let them use it for like their units for school because they were doing more of like an independent study thing. It had nothing to do with what I was doing, and I was able to get them to work with me, and I paid them, and they learned something. And one of my friends, she transferred to CISA, and she'll be graduating this year. She's doing her undergrad, and while she liked doing the shell bead stuff, she decided like I think I like cultural anthropology better. So she's doing
So
her
what were some of the conclusions that you were able to gather from your Shelby
so
dissertation?
yeah. So actually, so I tried to make my thesis more of like a like how do you say it? It actually really at the end of the day it didn't have to do with the shell beads anymore. It had to
Okay.
do with how you can incorporate undergraduate students into working with orphan collections and what they can get
Ah,
out of that and how that can help solve the orphan collection issue. The they call it a larger like curation crisis because it is a curation crisis. So that's what I wanted to write about at the end of the day. And I remember, going back to UCLA and trying to look at my data and just being like, I don't even, like I can't tell you what I did. Like it was so much, and I'm just so
yeah.
I'm confused about everything, all the questions I had. I don't know what's up or what's down at this point. And so
Mhm.
they remember them telling us, you yourself, you have to see the patterns in what was happening during your analysis or your ethnographies, whatever you were doing. What were the people telling you? And so I figured at that point, I think what was most important was not exactly the shell beads themselves, while they were important, and I do think that they deserve to be published about. There's just so much more work that needs to be done before something can be said about them. And I was not able to accomplish that just in one summer, only a couple of weeks. But instead, I wrote about the relationship that undergraduate students can make, using orphan collections, gaining experience, specifically at a community college level, because at a community college level, you don't expect to be doing this type of research.
So
That's
my takeaway from this story, like for the general understanding of archaeology, is that people ask things like, so what does it mean?
So what does
What do
it
those
mean?
mean? You know, and the answer is you have no idea how hard it is to get down to that answer.
Yeah.
Right, because you started out trying to do that. You wanted to know you took an orphan collection and you wanted to interpret that collection. That was the goal, right? That's how you started, and
Yeah.
you realized that there were so many steps that had to come first before you could even begin with that you couldn't even make it all the way to that goal. You had to stop somewhere in the still figuring out what it is phase, and bringing hush and bringing a lot of people involved just to get that
Involved,
done. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and especially in a place like Antelope Valley, California, where it's not really a sexy place to be an archaeologist.
Not
Like, you know,
necessarily.
it's not Chaco Canyon, for example, right?
Yeah.
So it's like there's not a lot of even data or resources to pull from. You're really like a trailblazer if you're doing anything in that area.
Yeah.
And so it's
And
everything is.
yeah, you're right. Exactly. And on the topic of orphan collections too, I mean, orphan collections are a lot of the research that's been published about orphan collections, aside from the archaeologists I talked about before, like Barbara Voss, and there are a couple other ones, but they talk about more theoretical issues, like I was talking about, like, but why are they orphaned? You know, they're very like big why questions. Why were they orphaned? Well, sometimes you might never know. Well, what do we do with the collections? Well, this is so my thesis was presenting as this might be a potential answer. We might have to get students to come, and in return the students understand how to work with these collections professionally. Another thing
So
that
you're
Barbara Voss does. Oh yeah.
You're saying that probably if somebody is retired or somebody wants an avocation, and they could go to their community college and enlist in, which by the way in California I think is free now, isn't it?
Is it? I
I
don't know.
think
I
that's
still have to
something.
pay for my
Anyway,
classes.
but anyway, they could go to their community college, enroll in this program, and become one of the people that can help illuminate history like that. There's a
Yeah, you
need for
could.
that.
You don't have to like prove yourself, because my professor at community college, Allen Valley College, she wasn't gonna let just anybody touch these collections though, because they
Mhm.
are, they're her in they she's inherited them, so she has to care for them now. They're her
Mhm.
responsibility essentially. She's the head faculty there, so she kind of has to entrust you. And at that point, I had known her for a couple years, so
Yeah.
when I proposed, hey, can I come back and work on these shell beads and this whole part of this collection, she was like, yeah, why not? And the
So
other
yeah, but
community college students who were working with the different aspects, the other aspects, the groundstone, the faunal, and the lithics, they had also been there for a while too, or they had, shown her, I'm a promising student.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Thank you so much for explaining about the orphan collections. So I hadn't heard of that before you brought it up, and I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And so that basically what you're saying is all over the Southwest, there's these little collections hiding
Oh,
away in
not
boxes
all over the world.
all
There
over
are
the
orphan
world,
collections in different countries too.
just waiting for a smart, inspired, ambitious person to go to community college and prove their mettle and work on it. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of a low bar. The community college should be 2 years. So if you have 2 years, if you retire at the age of 50 and you have some time to invest in your passion, this is completely an accessible way to contribute to the writing of American history. Like this is a legit path to doing something good for the world and learning something yourself, right?
Yeah. And then necessarily they don't have to be just stored at community colleges too. I mean, that's the second half of the definition of orphan collections, that they're kind of all over the place. They can be in museums too. So if you a lot of the times archaeologists too, when they're doing, whatever type of analysis or whatever type of questions they're trying to answer, they might go to a museum and say, "Hey, I know you have these collections here. Can I come and look at them?" And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes collections can get dropped there too, and just kind of like be in, like outer space, like where are they? Nothing's been done
Mm-hmm.
with them, but you want to come and work on them. And so it might bring light to certain issues that or exist within the collection themselves. So yeah, so as I was saying, the collections, they can be orphaned for so many different reasons. Like we talk about finances and stuff, but it could also be like retirement of faculty or whoever. If for instance, my community college professor, she used to get these weird boxes sometimes in front of her lab, and people essentially would go out. Just people in the Antelope Valley, but I'm sure this happens everywhere. They'd go out and they just go looking for stuff, like if you're hunting for arrowheads, I guess that's maybe their intentions. And they found X, Y, and Z things, or, cool rocks, and they were like, these are cool rocks, I'm going to take them. Knowing that they're actually, things that are important, they have a meaning. So they go and collect them, and then it'd be like, cleaning out their attic and be like, why do I have this box of rocks? Oh, yeah, let me go give it to the archaeology professor at the community college, see if she wants them. But the
Well, I
second
know.
that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say I know the Imperial Valley Desert Museum down in Ocotillo. They're very community oriented, and they have, they have limited funds. They're a very small town, but they're. I personally think that area is almost like the hub of civilization for the entire Southwest, because it's the coast. I mean, the age of the things that they have down there are just ridiculous. But they have all these boxes full of hand tools from deep antiquity. They have boxes full of research papers and maps. And I mean, had the opportunity to go through part of one box, and I couldn't believe the maps available that I could even use. I could take pictures of those maps. The resources available are indescribable. If you can make yourself available to a small regional museum like that, you could not only help that museum, but also, if you're an independent researcher, have access to an incredible amount of information. So that's a really interesting area to look into for fans or enthusiasts of the Southwest. So we before we run out of time, I really want to talk to you about the your experience. First of all, you did a dig in Utah.
I did,
and
yeah.
you had, let's see, I'm trying to choose which thing to ask you about. I think this is the most relevant because this is the ancient Southwest. So you did a dig in Utah. And you had the opportunity to actually have a native informant with you on that dig. So you would be,
Wait, I think that's two different stories I got mixed up. When I did actually
did it? Okay.
Yeah, when I did my excavations in Utah, it was actually part of a field school through Pasadena City College.
Okay. Which
and
informant?
Which one? Okay, so that was actually a survey I was on, like, not super long ago, only a couple months ago. And it was actually one of my first times working out in the field when there was a Native American monitor present.
And where was it? What region?
It was still in California. It was in Southern California, like in
Okay.
Barstow kind of area. Yeah.
And you had a
like
native
Nevada.
informant there as part of the team that helped figure out helped guide the process, right?
Yeah, well, so it's different in the sense that, like, I went to school and I learned how, like another archaeologist taught me, and they held up an artifact and said, like, this is this artifact because of X, Y, and Z reasons. Whereas Native American monitors, sometimes they come from their reservation. I'm trying to remember where this guy came from, but I can't remember. And I also don't think I should say it too, but he was a really cool dude, and he was really willing to talk to us, though. But you have to remember that we as archaeologists, we're trained in a certain way. We're trained in, like, the school academic setting. And these guys might come from their reservations usually. And so they might actually see these artifacts, like, just be like kind of like living artifacts on their reservation. Or for instance, they might see particular, like, rock types, or like they might just know, like, because maybe their ancestors or whoever talked about, like, making certain items. So I think the instance that you're talking about was when there was kind
some
of like a
controversy.
mishap that happened. Yeah. So
Yeah, and that was really interesting to me, where the native informant had a little bit of a little batting of horns with the head archaeologist, right? Do you
one of
feel
the head
comfortable to talk
archaeologists.
about that?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay.
It is exactly
'Cause
about
that's
that.
really interesting, and why it's valuable to have a native informant. And even if you could tell your opinion about how you perceived that was playing out, like psychologically for the people involved, that's a good story.
Okay. Let me see how I can tell this. So essentially, there was an item that was found while we were surveying, And well, let me get back to the Native American monitor. How I'm saying, like, they know things in a different way that archaeologists don't. They just know
Mhm.
things. And for instance, the reason why I say this, because one time on a completely different survey, I was trying to there was another Native American monitor that was there, and I think he was only there for like one day, and we actually happened to find it was like a flake. It was a flake that had been like repurposed, and it had essentially it broke while it was sitting there in the sun. And the Native American monitor said, "Hey guys, I found this thing. It's really cool. Come over here and see it." And so we all went to go look over at it. And me, I'm trying to like, he was like, "Yeah, like it's a refit. Like you can repiece them together. It fits exactly together. You know, like a puzzle piece, literally." And I'm just like fumbling with these artifacts, and I'm like, I don't understand. It just, and the guy took it from my hands and just like one, two, three, just put it together, like, you know, like literally, like so. And I was like, I didn't have anything to say, and he just turned around and he was just like, yeah, well, it's in my blood, it's not in your blood. And I was like, you know what? I guess you're kind of right. so but Native American monitors are supposed to be there. Usually they don't always have to be there, but depending on the job. But Native American monitors are there kind of to like keep the peace, kind of to make sure everything's going right. um, and their input is really valid too, because like I said, they know things in a different way that archaeologists don't know, because we're taught in a different setting. And it's not to say that, oh, we're right and they're wrong, or they're right and we're wrong. Well, the goal is that we're supposed to work together and try and, you know, have a you know, discussion about what we think something might be or might not be, or, you know, if someone has different input. So on a different survey with a different monitor, we had found an item, or someone had found an item. I remember it wasn't me. I know that. And I was working with one of the lead archaeologists, and there was a disagreement about the item and whether or not it was actually an artifact, or because, you know, sometimes that's the thing, we need to keep talking to other archaeologists or other Native American monitors, because sometimes the discussion is this even an artifact, or is this just like a rock that broke in a really weird way that kind of looks kind of cool, it kind of looks like it could be something, but it's actually not, it's just nothing, it just broke in a weird way. So that's the kind of the argument that we were going on. And so when the archaeologist came around, we were actually using a GPS device to take specific points on these artifacts. The archaeologist had deemed this is not an artifact. And the Native American monitor, I think it might have been him that found it, but like I said, well, this all happened before I even got to the site. I was just working with the archaeologist to document these. And the Native American monitor was upset about this. And he said, like, no, you don't understand. It is an artifact, and it's an artifact for X, Y, and Z reasons. And one of the things that he had connected to is this specific material, this geologic material. I literally see this on the reservation that I'm at. So that's why I know, and that's why you guys don't know. Well, he didn't say it like that, because, you know, it sounds kind of like harsh. But, you know, saying like, I know this is, and I can see the way that it has broken, like, it's an intentional break. You know, it was being used for something. It was not just broken because, you know, it fell or whatever happened to the rock that it broke in a certain way. He's saying, no, this is all intentional. It is an artifact, in fact. And so there was a big disagreement about, you know, it's just one artifact too, but then you think like, this one artifact is really important, and it was really important for that guy to make sure that, you know, he was doing his part too. Like, that's what he's there for too. And so it was a weird situation, because I remember when we were starting the survey, they had said, you know, like, you know, I think we were all like in a circle around like the main guy, and he was just the main archaeologist, and he was just saying how, you know, Native American monitors are here and we're going to work with them. At the end of the day, if we think if it's an artifact or if it's not an artifact, we're just going to mark it like in our GPS. We're just going to take it, because maybe if it's not an artifact, then, you know, at the end of the day, we just marked it and it was just a rock, but it also could have been an artifact. And so, and, you know, they did this whole spiel about like, you know, the Native American monitors are here for a reason, and then we're not to step on their toes, and they're there to technically, you know, they're to monitor us to make sure we're doing our jobs too, and, you know, help with in the discussion of, you know, determining things. And it was really weird for me to see, because it happened, you know, and I was field technician, and I mean, I am a field technician, so I'm kind of like the bottom. I'm on the way low of the archaeology. So I'm still an archaeologist, but like I'm not a project manager or anything. And so while I have some say to be like, hey guys, I found this thing, you know, I don't have a lot of say. So it's really interesting to see this whole thing just play out. And me, I was just like, I saw this discussion and I remember what had been said, you know, on our, you know, before we even went out to survey about, you know, if it's not an artifact or it is an artifact, we're going to take the point anyways. And then when the archaeologist came around and was talking to me and said, do you think this is an artifact? And I had said, you know, like, I'm actually not really sure. He had said, you know, it's not an artifact. And the Native American monitor was all like, but it was an artifact. I just said it was an artifact, you know. So it's kind of, it was a little bit hypocritical, and it made me, you know, and this is kind of one of the first times I've ever worked with Native American monitors. Kind of made me realize, like, you know, they were taught in a different setting, and also like this is part of their culture. This this is where I see myself as being like an outsider. While I'm trained and, you know, to find these things or to look out for them, I'm not part of it. It's not my blood. But I can be respectful in a certain way by respecting other people's opinions. So I kind of felt like there was, yeah, it was this obvious disagreement that was going on, and I felt like I was in a weird position. Yeah, that's
Was
kind of
there
the end of my story.
what ended up going in the report? Was it an artifact
No,
or
I
not
don't
an
know.
artifact?
That's the thing. I don't know, and the reason why I don't know, like I said, I'm on the like the bottom of you know,
Yeah.
I'm the way bottom. Okay, because I'm just a field technician. I'm essentially just another pair of trained eyes that I can look
So
out for
I
artifacts, so I know.
remember when you told me about this before, I do remember you saying you had an opinion about the head archaeologist and what they maybe should have done. Do you,
I didn't think that they should have said that. I think that
okay, whatever. You feel free to leave that part out if you want.
yeah. Well, no, but no, well, no. I think my opinion was that I didn't agree with the head archaeologist, but I was in the, you know, like I'm in a kind of precarious position, like I said, because I'm not the Native American monitor. It's not my culture, and it's not my job to tell someone yes or no, or if you're wrong or if you're right. I'm also not the head archaeologist who's supposed to be the person who's leading the team and making these final decisions, essentially. And so
Did you
while
think ego was at play on either person's part?
I think it could have been part of it, yeah, I do certainly. I don't know how I want to like get into that, but I do think that, yeah,
Okay.
that maybe on both people's part, that it had a big, you know, they might have had a big ego.
So we've been talking for about an hour. I would like to ask you about one more thing. Do you have about
Sure.
10 more minutes to spare, or do you have to
Yeah.
go
No,
somewhere?
I'm not doing anything.
Okay. I would like to hear you describe the difference between a North American dig and a dig you did in Spain. What were because there's different techniques or kind of modes that are used in different countries. And you notice that firsthand, that if you're doing an archaeological dig in different regions of the world, it's a totally different ball of wax. Can you kind of,
Yeah.
you know, briefly identify some key differences between each?
Yeah. So, in the United States, we excavate, like we make our own rules kind of for excavation. Like there are essentially a lot of different rules you can go by. You know, you can go by stratigraphy, which is like looking at what does the what are you seeing in the dirt? Like what is that telling you, and how should you proceed in this? And that's kind of how they took that perspective in Spain when I was excavating there. But in the United States, and it's kind of I guess more of like a CRM adapted method, but we make our own levels in the sense that, well, like they're not determined by anything like scientific or anything really. I mean, no, it is scientific because they're counting, they're using centimeters. So they're saying that we're gonna make one level, and one level is gonna be 10 centimeters. But this can change. I mean, like say if they know they're on a site, and if you know you're on a site and you know you've been finding a lot of things, you might want to move slower. So you, instead of going 10 centimeters, like each 10 centimeters increments, you maybe go 5 centimeters. Or say, you know, like if you're working in a situation where you're working fast, maybe sometimes people go like 20 centimeter increments. So it depends. So when I was in Utah, like I said, we had done more like CRM methods. And so we did a 1x1 meter unit, and she didn't really have any rules for us, but like when to stop. She just kind of said, you're going to stop when you, it's this weird thing she would call like kitty litter. Like how you were saying it's like bedrock, but it's like, it looks like cat litter. It was weird. It was weird in Utah. But you could feel it. Like it was really hard. And she was like, yeah, when you get to that point, like you're not going to be able to excavate anymore. Like it's just going to be too hard. The ground, the soil is too hard. You won't be able to essentially like penetrate through it. So when I was on that excavation, we did go by
So
10 by 10
I'm sorry, were
centimeters.
you equating that to my explanation of why people don't excavate the Mojave Desert so much? Because
Yeah,
there's this philosophy that once you reach that desert pavement level, like nothing would have ever gone through there.
yeah,
Nothing was before
yeah.
that.
Nothing's ever underneath that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
except in Utah, I mean, it was just, it was like I think maybe the deepest unit we had done that summer at my field school was like I think maybe it was actually 100 centimeters. I could be wrong, but it could be somewhere around there. But she said pretty much, when you come across that kitty litter, you can't go past it. So it was really weird. When she kept saying it was really weird. I was like, I don't understand what kitty litter means. And then you touch it and you're like, this, it kind of feels like stucco-y like material. It's really hard though.
I want archaeology to go past the kitty litter because I feel like there's another 10,000 years under that, but
Well,
that's a
yeah, but
different
then
discussion.
yeah, that's a different discussion. You might need a paleontologist on here.
Yeah.
um, so yeah,
Well, no, I think there might be an anthropologist needed under that level,
it could be, but
but
the only thing that plays into that is just like the money and the time. Like, do you want to
you
be
know,
out in the hot Utah sun? And at that point, you need like a jackhammer, and if you need a jackhammer, you're prone to like destroy artifacts. So there's a lot of like other components
yeah.
that have to be thought of before that, though. But yes, everyone wants to get below the kitty litter. You'd be lying if you said you didn't. um, it was oh yeah. So when I was excavating in Spain, it was really different. It was different not only because it was Spain, but it was different because of the site I was excavating at. So I was actually excavating at a Neanderthal rock shelter.
Hmm.
And because it's Neanderthals and they are so old, in the United States, we don't have Neanderthals here because it's the New World. And so we only have Homo sapiens, essentially, as far as we know right now. But it's only Homo sapiens. We don't go that back. So because Neanderthals are so old and it's so important to be documenting it, um, you go incredibly slow. I mean, seriously, incredibly slow. Like, if you ever look up just like Google pictures of like excavations and you see people like sitting on these kind of benches and they're just kind of like using the little brush and like a little dustpan and just kind of brushing, that's really how
Like
it was in
one grain
Spain.
at a time.
Yes, they would
It's like
actually get so upset with us in Spain if we moved too fast. It'd be like, you're going too fast.
that's the part that I thought was really interesting. Like you're there with your little pan and your little brush, and you're brushing at like like 5 brushes per second. They come around and slap your hand, right? You're like
Yeah, they'd
two
be like,
brushes.
you're going too fast because another thing is that they were not excavating, like how I said, like in the United States, we were doing, these arbitrary levels based on centimeter count. So for instance, I had like 10 centimeters. We were doing 10 centimeter levels when I was in Utah. But in Spain, they were going based on the stratigraphy. And so what stratigraphy means is they're looking at the different stratigraphic layers that can be seen in the soil. So
Oh, so they wanted everybody to be at the same level at the same time.
well, that's the thing. Like and this I was kind of all over the place, and I didn't even understand. And then I didn't understand some of it because I don't understand a ton of Spanish. I mean, my Spanish has gotten better, but what they did know how to say to us was stop excavating so fast. You need to go slower. um, but yeah, essentially, like if so, that site was really just kind of like on a slant. Like the whole thing was a slant, as opposed to in the United States, we're trying to make it like super level. Everything's got to be leveled. You pulled out these levelers. I don't know if you guys have ever seen them. They look like this. Oh, you can't see
Mm.
it here in front of my face. They like attach it
Yeah.
to a string and use it to level. See? So we're
Okay.
like really like that's our methods here. Um, And in Spain, when I got there, it was like a culture shock because like when I was in the United States, they were like, yeah, on a normal day in CRM, you're gonna be doing like 2 test units a day, and time is
Mm.
money. And then when we got to Spain, they were like, literally slow down. You're going too fast. You our little pan to put the dirt in, like it was like a little brush and a dustpan, and then we'd have like a bucket. The bucket was so shallow. If you put like 2 3 scoops in it, like kind of decent sized scoops in it, they'd be like, you know what, you need to go sift that now. It's too much in that bucket. Like it really wasn't a lot. And so their goal there was just to go super slow, just go very slow so we can see. Another reason why they were doing that was because it was a rock shelter. They had they knew based on excavation from other years that there was like a series of hearths, and hearths are they're like it's like a campfire essentially. If you might make like a little ring of rocks and then have a campfire in it. And so you can tell that there are hearths in the you know that were previously there because they leave like this ashy type of soil. It's dark colored. You might see remnants of if they were cooking things. You might see bones and stuff in there. There's tons of stuff you can find in that. And so they wanted us to go very, very slowly because there was like so many hearts that we had found that summer. Like I think like 3 or 4. And
And then the value would be you'd find out what they're eating or what they're burning, like what's
yeah,
the plant life
exactly.
they were burning, what
Yeah,
would
yeah,
the
yeah.
nature of the charcoal, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, hearts they can give you a lot of information about what they were eating exactly. And so that's another reason why they wanted us to go so slow, is because they knew they were finding hearths, like so many. And if you find one hearth, lower than where you found a hearth before that, you can say like, the hearth above this is younger than this one. But if you keep
Mhm.
finding hearths, you can say like there were different periods of occupation here.
Yeah,
So
we find that out here in the far southwest agave roasting pits. Like you can find that like
yes, yeah, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know 10 meters of agave roasting pits.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so same thing. I mean, if you find them, it can give you a lot of information. But for them in Spain, they knew that they were coming, and so they were like, "You guys have to go really slow because you don't want to just excavate so fast." And you realize, like, wait, this was kind of dark soil that I went on, and like, but I went really fast, and now, I scooped up like a little bit too much dirt, and now it's not dark soil anymore. It's actually like that lighter colored
Mm.
soil that I was dealing with before, and you can see that like you might have hit like the really far perimeter of a hearth. And so where the middle area would have been really concentrated and like maybe way darker, but you hit an outer perimeter that was kind of dark but not like super dark, something like that. So then they if
Mm.
they find a hearth, then they'd be like, stop everything, everyone's working on this hearth, we all gotta excavate it, like just really slowly, everyone go really slowly. So yeah, that was really different when I got there.
So
Besides the language barrier too.
do you think that if that same method had been applied in your Utah excavations, the information would have been richer? Or do you think that the nature of the artifacts in the Utah excavation warranted going faster?
Well, I think it depends on the site, the
Like
specific
the
site,
one
and
you
what
worked
they know
on.
about it. Yeah. So for the specific site that we were working on in Utah, it wasn't super exciting. It was a dried up lake bed. And then
Okay.
you're like, well, I got dried up lake bed compared to like a rock shelter for Neanderthals. That's awesome, man. Like, which one would you want to do? So while the other one's going really slow, the other one you're just doing a lot of manual labor. So really, it just
Okay.
depend on like the site, and like I had said before, like there is so much more prehistory in Europe than there is here,
The Neanderthal.
because yeah, exactly they have what was
I want to stop you there and just
becoming
clarify.
human.
You mean there's more different kinds of humanoid people to
Yeah,
excavate,
hominids.
not yeah, hominids, thank
Yeah.
you. Versus North America, which you're only dealing with Homo sapiens. That's what you mean by
Yeah, but that's
more.
not to say that in North America you're like not gonna find anything. That's what I'm saying. It kind of depends on the site. Where we were excavating was a dried up lake bed, so like what could you really find in a dried up lake bed? And it was
Paleontology,
like,
not
yeah, so like
anthropology, right?
sometimes what we were finding was like, I had just taken a zoo archaeology class from my professor at UCLA before I had gone to Utah, and I was like, I had all like these fish bones. We had to do fish. I hate fish. Okay, like learning the bones of fish was awful, but since we were like excavating in the lake bed, I was like finding these fish bones, and I had actually I I because it was like I said, it was all fresh in my mind. I kind of knew a little bit more than what the actual lady who was running the field school. Not that she didn't know anything. It's just that, I just had the class. Everything was so fresh in my brain. And when I saw like a fish bone, I was like, oh, this is, X, Y, and Z. I think I found an otolith one time, which an otolith is like I guess it's kind of more of like a hearing kind of, it's not really a bone. It's more like a calcium type of thing for fish to hear and like keep their like equilibrium and stuff. So yeah, but it preserves in a different way than regular bones would. And so when I found this, I was all like, "Oh my god, I found this! This is so awesome!" And everyone around me is like, "What is that?" Nobody knows what it is. They don't care. So I mean, but that was like the most exciting thing. Actually, I think
Yeah.
we did find a projectile point in there. It was a really weird scenario. I think it was actually in my excavation unit that we had found like a really nice projectile point, but when we were excavating first, I can't remember, maybe like 40 to 50 centimeters deep, we found one, like half of one, and we were like, oh, there's a half here, and we're showing it to our professor, and she's like, yeah, it looks like a half, but it had like the cleanest edge, like it looked like it just, like it just broke right in half when someone was working on it, and so we're like, okay, whatever. So we keep excavating,
So
and then
you could conclude from that that it was dry for a long time and people were just working on it in the middle of this dry lake bed, you think?
it could have been
Or did
dry,
it
yeah,
wash in? Maybe it
yeah.
washed in from somewhere
It could
else.
have washed in too, yeah. The lady there who's running the field school, she had different theory, and the reason why is because like I think the next 10 centimeters or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but the next 10 centimeters we found the literal other half of the projectile point. And so yeah, we did the refitting. They fit right back together, and we were like, oh my god, that's so cool. We were like having a little fangirl moment.
Did
It was really
anybody offer
cool.
an explanation about how that could have happened?
So
10 centimeters different?
she said, I bet you somebody was working on this projectile point and hit an inclusion. An inclusion in, I think it was obsidian.
Yeah.
I think the material was obsidian.
But
So
10 centimeters, like that's timed,
that's,
right?
yeah, but it also could have been, like different processes that have caused the two to separate. Different
Oh, like
geological
maybe
processes.
an
Yeah.
earthquake shifted the earth or something
Yeah,
like that, right?
yeah, or just like bioturbation. Bioturbation is just like a rodent gets in and they move around stuff because they do that all the time.
Mhm.
Whatever, or a
Mhm.
new like a root comes in through whatever plant and they grow in such a way and then it just separates things. You can never really
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, when we showed that projectile point to our professor, she was like, we actually didn't notice it at first. We didn't notice it, but we were like, hey, this is the same material as that other one. And like, we didn't say anything about it afterwards. And then the professor was all like, wait, didn't you guys find another half in this? Like yesterday? And we were like, oh yeah, we did. It's like, it's over in that, like the little setup lab that we had a couple yards away. She was like, someone go get me that.
Mhm.
And they brought it back over and she was like, she refit them and she was all like, this is literally the same one. And so we were all just like, what? What? We were like, we were just in awe about what was happening. This is all like our first
That's
field school
very
ever.
cool.
But her theory
Yeah.
was that someone came along, they were working on it, like, I don't know, putting final touches on it, whatever they wanted to do. And they must have hit like an inclusion. So like I was saying, for obsidian, an occlusion is kind of easy to see. It's some type of like, particle or something. It's hard though. It's not necessarily like a little tiny particle. Something that gets
Mhm.
into the obsidian, well, before it is essentially like dried
Before it
and like
cools all the
hardened.
way.
Yeah, before it cools. So that's why sometimes if you do see obsidian, you see like these tiny like specks in it that are kind of white or whatever color they might be. You can
Mhm.
see them and they don't, obsidian doesn't break as well. And so imagine if you're making a projectile point or whatever type of tool you're making, and you hit one of those little inclusions, it just bam, busts your whole thing. So that's what she
Mm.
was saying. She's like, it probably hit some type of inclusion in here, and it just ruined all of their plans. They were probably so mad they just threw it. Which they could have been. I mean, like, imagine yourself trying to make a stone tool and you break it, and you're so mad because you're right at the end point. It's like making a sandwich, and then like the first bite you take, all of the middle part falls out and you just get the bread. You're so mad at that point. So you're just like, I don't even want to eat the sandwich anymore. I'm gonna go make something different. It's awful feeling, and we still have the same type of emotions now that we probably did then, I can imagine. So imagine being done with this cool projectile point. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go hunt for whatever thing, or I'm gonna go use this in such a certain way, and then bam, it breaks, and you're like, geez, I spent so many hours making this great projectile point, making this great epic sandwich, and everything just fell apart.
I think that is a perfect note to close this off, because that's kind of how I approach a lot of this. Okay, so I'm going to go on a little bit of a mini speech.
Okay, go ahead.
People, so because I specialize in rock art, that's what I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
And people, so there's like hierarchies of good interpretation. There's that looks like an alien, that looks like a carrot, like just fantastic, whatever your eyes matrix out of that situation is, what you think it is. You're like, I mean, yeah, it does, but what did it look like to the person who made it, right? That's where you have to like narrow it in a little bit. Okay, well, this person was human, like you were saying, they had the same emotions. These are humans, and by the way, not that distantly removed from today. They're basically the exact same kind of human we are. It's not like we're talking about the first Homo sapien to now. We're talking about a couple of 100 years. I mean, so in most cases, or a couple thousand, but either way, it's the same kind of human. So we have all the same emotions. We have all the same, physical needs. You need shelter, you need food, you need love, you need touch. I mean, these things that are just human needs, right? So that's the next level. Okay, so the human would be thinking about what I'm on the edge of a riverbed. There's high walls around me. It's on the winter solstice. There's a thing here. Like, what does a human think in this situation? You know what I mean? Like there's that kind of thing. And then you get down to, okay, but who were these people? What were they taught as children? What are the stories of the people? How were they created? What does this valley mean as a corridor for their people? What is it, a travel corridor? Is it a hunting corridor? Is it in the sun? Is it in the dark? Is it, you got to like keep bringing it down into what does it mean to that culture, to that people at that time? Then you get down to, was it in 1300 or was it in 11,000 BC? That's totally different. But like, you can't look at rock art that was carved into a rock at the year 1300 and think it has any relationship to rock art that was carved 8,000 BCE, right? So then you have to go start looking at that. So I guess my point is, yes, humans are humans, but we can't be so fast to assign meaning. There's so much, like, you are a perfect example of why we don't make interpretations so quickly. There's so many steps involved in first, where was it? Brush stroke.
Yeah.
And you're not an expert in ash. Then it has to go to the biologist who can analyze what wood was this ash made of. Oh, wait a minute. This year, they didn't have any local wood. Why is that? They had to import wood to do their hunting. They had to carry what, you know what I mean? Like, there's all these different things. So I think that's the value of what paying attention to the kind of work you do is for anybody who's like an enthusiast of the field. Because enthusiasts, nobody is going to have an upper secondary education in this kind of specialty like you have. Lay people don't do that. They just go and appreciate. But I think the value is hearing some of these stories that you have to tell and understanding what's behind the scenes of good interpretation. We can look at lots of things and we can kind of wonder it doesn't mean there's no meaning, and it doesn't mean that there never can be a meaning. It just means that there's so many steps you have to take to get a quality hypothesis that will never actually be proven, but it can be a quality hypothesis. Do you have any response to that?
No, I think you're right. I mean, this is kind of the reason why some archaeologists really debate with one another. I mean, making a hypothesis, and then someone else comes along and they're like, you know what? I respect what you say, but I think you're totally wrong. And I think it's this way, you know. And like honestly, I've heard of archaeologists literally hating one another because of that. Like so much so, like wishing like ill being on another person, like so. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get down to like interpretation, and that's it's the science behind it. Why do you think it is this way? And it's the history behind it too. And how can you prove that it is a certain way? And then you know, at the end of the day, it's a hypothesis. Sometimes we might not ever know, and or sometimes there could be like so many different reasons. Like, for instance, like take how did we become bipedal? Well, you can say, it's for X reason or Y reason, but at the end of the day, it could be all these reasons, or it could be some of these reasons more than the other reasons, but they also had something to play in it too. And that's where you get different people with competing hypotheses, and, but that's kind of what makes I think that's what makes the discipline, better, because, it's not just one answer sometimes. It's not like, like we're making a vaccine. There's one answer to solve something. We got to make a vaccine. You know what we're going through right now. We got to make a vaccine, and then we're going to get better. But in archaeology and anthropology, there can be so many different ideas as to why something happened, and how can you prove that those are your ideas, and it's an actual way that could have happened, or, X, Y, and Z for these certain events. So yeah, you make up a really good point though. And it is very true that sometimes archaeologists literally hate each other based on some.
Yeah, but even amongst the archaeologists who hate each other, they're not guessing. It's not guessing. Oh, I lost you. Can you hear me? Oh, I think I lost you. Oh no. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. You know what? I am gonna thank you. I don't know if you can hear me, Sarah. Thank you so much for this wonderful experience of getting a chance to talk to you. And I can see you're trying to do some tech, but I want to thank you. This has been an amazing opportunity.
My headphones actually died. I had them plugged in,
okay.
But I didn't know they're actually plugged in.
Okay, I'm closing up because it looks like we're about it. I think Zoom's going to kick us off, actually.
Oh yeah,
I wanted
they might.
Well, just to cap off that, even though the archaeologists may hate each other for their hypotheses, at least our hypotheses are scientifically based proposals versus guesses. It's not guessing, and it's not unknowable, but there is some informed conclusion that can be debated at the very least.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to thank you so much for informing this whole thing. I think there's a lot of value in just kind of hearing some of the nitty gritty that goes on and trying to come to some of those kind of hypotheses, and why it's not a field of guessing, why you invest in upper secondary education and how to do it well. And ladies and gentlemen, the face of the future of archaeology, this wonderful
so much pressure.
This is not the Indiana Jones or your, although trust me, I value the silver fox with all that experience, who is now retired, who has so much information to share. Those people are my heart. Those are the people I go to for all of my wonderful information, the people who came before. So I don't disparage the elderly in the field by any means. Please don't misunderstand, but I'm just saying that you may picture archaeologists in one way, and here we have Exhibit A of some people who are coming up, and I think it's a really good, you make a good role model for people, young ladies or anybody just entering the field. This is kind of a new way to look at archaeology, this face you have. So I just thought it was nice to share. public. And I appreciate you participating.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank
This is
you so
fun.
much.
No problem.
I-
I had a lot of
I'm
fun.
going to say goodnight to you and goodnight to anybody who's watching this. And I'm just so much appreciation for everybody. If you're seeing this through YouTube, you can join the Facebook group, the Ancient Southwest Facebook group, or go to theancientsouthwest.com and get all the links. And thank you so much, Sarah. May the fire inside you continue to burn brightly.
Thank you.
Have a good night, okay?
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.